In today's video, I talk with children's book illustrator Stephanie Fizer Coleman, and we debate the pros and cons of using Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator in our work. Stephanie is a master at Adobe Photoshop, and I prefer Adobe Illustrator. So we debated the pros and cons of using each program for our illustration and surface pattern design work. And this was originally recorded for IGTV, and we at the time were talking about a bundle that we did together, but the bundle is no longer available, as you'll see. But I left in some of the things about Stephanie's class because we did have a discussion about how knowing Photoshop and Illustrator at the same time can be a real asset in your career. Today we are talking Photoshop versus Illustrator. So Stephanie is a Photoshop master. I prefer Illustrator. And I have to say the other topics that I discussed yesterday, I talked with Ronnie about selling your artwork versus licensing your artwork. Tomorrow I'm talking about agents with Shannon McNabb. But I have to say that both of those things, I don't feel, they both work, but this one I feel pretty strong about. So, I'll try not to get too competitive, but, we'll just see how it goes. And Stephanie, of course, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, which, you guys should be following Stephanie for sure. Can you just give us a little intro?
Sure. I'll give you the little 2-second intro. So I am a children's book illustrator and an art licensing dabbler. And I teach digital art app classes. So I teach classes on Photoshop and Procreate, and I help people have kick-ass careers as artists.
Yeah, she does. So exciting. So we're gonna, we could probably both go on forever about the pros of each of our respective programs, but we're gonna try to keep it, concise today. And we're doing 3 of our top, reasons why we love our programs. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? Doesn't matter.
I'll go first.
Do it.
I'm the guest here, so I'll go.
Of course, by all means.
Okay, so my #1 thing that I love about Photoshop is, wait for it, no surprise, texture.
Of course. Yes, that is the big one.
It's my favorite thing. It's probably my favorite thing about Photoshop. Now, I will say that when I first started illustrating digitally, I used to use Illustrator and Photoshop together. I would do all of my flat colors in Illustrator, and then I would send it over to Photoshop and do all my texturing and everything. So still texture Photoshop.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar experience because I used to work with Photoshop and Illustrator about equally, honestly, and I would create patterns in Photoshop. And then sometimes, depending on what the project was, I would use Illustrator. And now when I go back through my my portfolio and I'll open a file and I'm like, why did I do this in Photoshop? I should have done it in Illustrator. So it all just depends. It's kind of crazy. But yes, of course, texture is I've been working hard to figure out how to add more texture to my Illustrator files. And clearly you are a master at it with your illustrations. So Photoshop and texture definitely are best friends. So that's a big one. However, of course, unlimited scaling and rotating, the whole vector, the beauty of the vector, I can make things bigger, smaller. And I was realizing when I was making this list, Stephanie is, book illustrator mostly. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of pattern and stuff for products, and I'm moving my images around a lot. I'm changing the sizes. I'm using icons that are in a pattern, and then I'm putting them in a greeting card. I'm doing a lot of moving and shaking with my motifs, whereas you're doing a spread that's beautiful, and then it's gonna stay there in the book, so
not as much.
Yeah, so that unlimited scaling and rotating without losing, without loss of resolution or getting, poor quality is huge for me, right? So that is why I have to stick with my Illustrator so I can do anything I want to do, move things around, and make it easy.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Photoshop isn't as bad as Procreate. Procreate really loses quality pretty fast if you start transforming and moving things around. But Photoshop loses quality too if you tinker with things too much. So
yeah. Yeah. Well, I used to do, and I mean, I know when I would take old vintage documents for companies and scan them and put them into repeat and stuff like that for my job for textiles, I'd be reducing colors and stuff, and then you're like turning things a little bit to get everything to work out, and then it's like you need those pixels. You have to stay in indexed color because otherwise you're going to start getting crazy pixels, and it's like, I mean, you can only do that in Photoshop in some cases with those vintage documents, but when I'm creating new, I definitely want that Illustrator look. So
yeah, I definitely think that's important for you.
for me, I know exactly. So what is your next thing?
All right, my number two reason that I love Photoshop more than Illustrator is that I can layer color. So it's, you know, I don't just have like flat colors. I have really awesome like layered colors that sort of blend together. And like they've got that sort of like hand painted look about them. So I dig that.
Yes, that's true. That makes sense. And that like with the textures of having the kind of like the paintbrush look and stuff like that. That is true. You do a good job with that.
Yeah, because the texture thing is like, you know, it's a many-armed beast. You know?
Yes, 100%. That's true. And it's great for the like environments that you do with your like scenes and your backgrounds and stuff like that. So
if you guys don't know, I paint a lot of animals and like birds and stuff like that. Even for my kids' books, it's mostly animal stuff. So there's always a lot of like foliage and trees and pretty skies and sunsets and sunrises, you know, and I can't get that pretty sunrise and sunset situation in Illustrator.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But on the other hand, easy color changes in Illustrator. So if you make that sunrise and suddenly it needs to be a sunset, you have to like redo the whole thing. Or I mean, you can obviously do like hue balance and stuff like that. There are of course ways to change colors in Photoshop, but it's not as simple as like a whole new colorway and just like something a whole fresh look, like going from a Christmas look to a spring look or something like that. Like that's just not an option with Photoshop. I can just select all, do my little, you know, recolor tool, click, 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 done. It's so easy. So that is massive for me. I use that tool all day, every day.
Well, yeah,
so
he's doing like different colorways and you need to have all those options. I mean, you can do that in Photoshop, but you really have to set yourself up for success in the beginning of the process.
Yes, exactly.
If you've got all of one color on the same layer, so it's easy to just grab it and change the color real quick. Otherwise, you know, it's a miserable, time-consuming experience.
Yes. Or if you're an index color, like I'm still thinking textiles and stuff, you can like reduce colors and stuff like that and then change. But even doing that is not that easy. Even when you have it down to like 10 colors or something for if it was like a fabric design, it's still not as like easy as switching it on Illustrator. So
definitely.
But yeah, it is all about how you're set up. So I'm seeing a trend here, which is that, you know, clearly there's a reason why we each like what we do, and it's because we design in a different way in general. So, you know, we're designing for different things, the end products. So basically what I'm saying is if you're a surface designer, Illustrator all the way. And if you're a book illustrator, then you can decide your choice. It's up to you.
I'm in and say that for licensing, I do mostly like greeting cards type stuff, and Photoshop is fine for that. You know, you're not going to have that many colors that you need to tweak. It's, you know, Photoshop is fine. So we're right. Whatever anybody wants to use is
right. That's true. And when we were talking about this on Instagram, I was announcing that we were going to have this debate, and then people were chiming in about their preferences, and you know, we were talking about Jill Howarth, and also Kat Uno does everything. And I don't know if she does everything now, but I know she does a lot of Illustrator, and she makes, you know, beautiful textures and super cute work. So like, you know, it's all just, you know, I don't know. It's all just kind of what you put the focus into. So.
I will say, Jill does a really awesome job texturing in Illustrator. She's one of like, for sure, people who are just like super amazing at it. But I would also question, are her textures scalable, or are they raster textures?
From what I've seen of hers, I bet they are raster. Some of mine are less scalable. I do get texture in, but I use some raster bits. I do a little cheating for sure. But Well, we have to get some tech, you know, I mean, I'm equal opportunity, but I think hers are mostly roster from what I mean, I haven't looked at all her work, but I do have a couple of her books and they look pretty vectory, but they are great. What is your next and your third and final most favorite thing about Photoshop?
All right, my third and final, and I feel like all of mine just sort of like work together because of the style that I have, but the thing that I really love about Photoshop is that I get a really hand-painted look. So I even have like art directors ask me all the time, like, oh, is this watercolor? Is this gouache? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's Photoshop. Like, so magical. But yeah, I definitely can't get that in Illustrator. And also I super don't want to actually paint anything because I have a horrible time committing to color and I like to be able to undo things. So,
oh yes, we can all agree on that.
And actual paint, like I was just saying the other day, like I see people's like beautiful gouache paintings all the time and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna just get out my gouache and I'm gonna start painting, and then I'm like, ugh, I'm not gonna do that because it requires too much effort and I can't.
Then you have to scan it and fix it all in Photoshop, right? That's how I do it whenever I do painting.
Photoshop takes twice as long, you know, like plus I have to make a mess and I don't like to make messes.
There we go. I feel you. Well, that makes sense. And like so more recently, honestly, I've been doing anything that I have to do like more hand painted. I have been doing in Procreate, honestly. And then I'll bring it into Illustrator as like PNGs and stuff like that. I don't know why. Photoshop, I think I have to like, I've been having issues with Photoshop that it's like crashing when I'm using brushes, when I'm trying to use brushes like that are really like watercolory. And I also don't know the brushes as well as I know my Procreate brushes these days. So I have been doing some Procreate, less Photoshop, and then still, you know, for my own personal work versus client work, my own personal work is much more Illustrator. And my third reason why I love Illustrator is the whole idea of strokes and fills. Being able to, first of all, like for a stroke, being able to adjust like your line work and like change direction by just kind of dragging rather than having to redraw the line until you get the right like curve that you want. And also line quality with strokes. Like sometimes I'll draw something and convert it to like, I'll draw it in Illustrator, but then I'll like scale it and then it'll be two items. One has like super thick line quality and one's super thin and like not working, but I just add a stroke and do a little bit of adjusting versus having to like thicken it and go through and like redraw and make everything look even. So that's like a quick, you know, there's so many like one-click things with Illustrator, and I'm a girl who is all about efficiency. So anytime I can just click a little tool and just do that, then that's good. So
like we should have like a race, you know, like, all right, here's this.
It's true. It's true. We should draw the same. We should have like a sketch. Oh, that's like a good, I don't like that idea. We should have like something that's like pre-sketched for, I don't know who, but then we both like design it in our thing. That's a good idea. I like that.
It would be really fun to like see, you know, the whole process and, you know.
Yeah, I like that.
A race.
Do a race, yes. Wow. And I've been looking at some of the comments here. I haven't been commenting, but I saw Rachel said that she hates the clipping mask in Illustrator versus Photoshop, which I will give you that. The clipping masks are a pain in the ass.
Why do they not just work the same way?
No, they should. And they really should. They should. I've been having that problem lately, actually. I feel like I've been doing it more, and I'm just like, yeah, what? I'm ready to like do the lit, and I'm like, oh no, that doesn't.
Like, why is it complicated? I'm like, you just right click and pick clipping mask in Photoshop, and it works. And then it works. Like what?
I'm with you. I'm with you on that one for sure. But part of the reason that we're talking about all this, I made an action for it. Ooh, that's a good one. You'll have to send that to us. Come on, share.
Mary McLean, because she's super smart about, you know, saving time and stuff.
Yeah, there we go. I love it. So part of the reason that we're talking about Photoshop and Illustrator today is because we are collaborating together this week. This week we are doing something together, which is the product to, no, I keep saying it backwards, the portfolio to product bundle, which has 5 awesome courses all together. And your course is about Photoshop. And there is another course by Natalie of Rise, Design, and Shine, which is about Illustrator. And I really do think it's important to know both, honestly. And would you tell us more about your Photoshop for Illustrators course?
Yeah, so my class is Photoshop for Illustrators, the basics. And it basically just strips away all of the crap and just goes exactly what you need to know to start illustrating in Photoshop. It's basically the class that I wanted or would have wanted when I started out, because when I started out, I was like scouring the internet for hours, like trying to find tutorials, and I didn't even know what to call the things that I wanted to do. Yeah. So it was just like, I'm just like looking up random Photoshop tutorials, like trying to hopefully land on something. And obviously I did eventually, but I'm saving people all of the trouble of having to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, Photoshop, obviously Photoshop is such a powerful program. It's like, clearly you can edit photos with it maybe, like obviously the main thing. So like, so to learn how to do it, yeah, for an illustrator, and I know for me, like, yeah, to learn how to do it for surface pattern design, it's like, it's just so specific. And so to have that sort of resource where you can just like, okay, we don't need to edit photos. We don't need to know about like lens flare or whatever things that can be done.
You know, if you are trying to learn Photoshop from scratch and you have no idea what you're doing, and there are just so many things, so many menus, so many brushes, so many tools, like it's just crazy. And the truth is you need to know like 5 tools to be
totally. Totally.
Breaking it down.
Exactly. Well, that's like, that just makes things easier. And then Natalie is teaching Illustrator for surface design, so real specific, and she is going through her whole process, and this is a never before seen course. So she's actually offering it live. I think it does start June 1st, but it's gonna be recorded, so like if you're not there that day or whatever. And it's all about her whole process of like, you know, brainstorming, sketching, doing the whole thing, and then putting it into pattern, making it special and interesting and on trend and everything. So kind of getting both sides of the story. And having come from a background of learning both and kind of working, you know, doing both this, you know, back and forth, it's just so valuable to like, I feel like people who, you know how to do one and are kind of scared of the other one, which is like totally fair. Obviously they're very like both super robust programs. So like they're, you know, you can't know everything there ever was, but like having a general understanding of both programs has been so helpful to me, because clients sometimes want that like painterly hand painted look, which I do not have mastered like Stephanie does, but I can pull it off. And then sometimes they want that like vector, you know, really modern look, you know. So
you know,
I love that that's both of those things are being offered.
Yeah, it's helpful to learn both, especially when you're starting out, because you sort of get a feel eventually for like what direction you're going to go. Because I used to use both all the time. And then, you know, as I got further into my career and I started doing kids books, I started just relying more on Photoshop all the time. And then I think you've had the opposite experience.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah, as more I was like working with my portfolio, I was just like, why would be much easier if I could just keep it in Illustrator. So you just never know what's gonna work for you. This bundle's only available until Sunday night, right? Mm-hmm. That's what. So after that, it's gone. Me and Steph won't be collaborating on anything ever again until we have our next showdown and we battle it out, drawing on Illustrator versus drawing on or illustrating on.
We're gonna have a race. We're gonna have a Photoshop Illustrator race, and then we'll have to have like an editing race.
I know, it's so true. Well, Steph is also working. Okay, look, Steph has got a lot of things going on. Can I just tell you, she's a very busy girl. So being part of this bundle, being on this IG Live is just one small portion of her very busy life. And she's also coming out with a new course next week. You want to tell us about that a little bit? I would love to hear more.
Sure. So I have a class it's actually a follow-up to an existing class. So on Tuesday, the Drawing Delightful Animals practice class is going to come out, and it's the follow-up to Drawing Delightful Animals. And I am basically sharing my entire process from sketch to finished animal illustration for 6 different animals. So it's a massive class. Elizabeth knows me. I am an overdoer. So it's
going to be very complete, but amazing.
Complex. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I've had a lot of fun recording all the animal stuff because I dig drawing animals. And yeah, I think that people are going to find it really helpful because I know I love to just see like the full process of something and hear somebody like I talk through my entire thought process, you know, like things go poorly in some of the demos and I have to start over again. It's very just like, you know,
yeah.
I'm super excited.
That's amazing. That's like, that is the best, to be able to kind of like basically watch over a designer's shoulder, which that's super exciting. But you have to know the basics first. So Photoshop the basics for Illustrator in this bundle. But that sounds super awesome. So that's coming out next week. So get on Stephanie's newsletter if you're not already. You can, her link in, I'm sure it's in her bio on Instagram. And of course, and you can get on my newsletter too. I'd love to see you guys on there. I do trends I do a monthly trend board for surface pattern and like product design, stationery, gift market. And then I do like kind of creative entrepreneurial business advice, freelancer advice, that kind of stuff. And then I just kind of like talk and just, you know, whatever. So,
so awesome. Her newsletter, it sounds exactly how she sounds right now when she's talking to you. It's like she's your best bud and just like telling you all the cool surface pattern design stuff.
Well, there we go. I mean, I'm basically on a mission to make everyone my best friend. And so whether they want to or not, I kind of accost people with my like, but we're going to be friends, right? Like, that's okay. I'm a bit needy, just a bit, not that much, I promise. But I probably won't make you get on an IG live with me like I've made Stephanie, but you know, she's special. There we go. That is a wrap on Photoshop versus Illustrator. I'm sure now you know exactly which program you want to use, right? We settled that score. But if you want to watch more IG lives from me, I've been trying to do them twice a month. You can follow me on Instagram at esilverdesign. And of course, I'd love it if you subscribed to this YouTube channel or shared if you're interested in surface pattern design.